Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. Returning from her long hiatus, brought upon by a case of the plague, is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing this week?
I still feel like crap. You guys, do me a favor and don't ever get pneumonia. This is like the worst. And I had a very minor case of pneumonia, and it's been over a month, almost like a month and a half at this point since I started getting sick, and I still feel like shit. I can't believe it. So don't ever get pneumonia because it's awful.
This public service announcement has been brought to you by Nerd to the Third Power and was sponsored by Coca-Cola. Enjoy.
We should throw a disclaimer in there. Nerd to the Third Power is not a medically licensed entity.
We're like the really cheap version of WebMD.
You got cancer.
Despite my name, I am not a medical professional, although I have performed some surgeries. All right. And Brian, how are you doing this week?
I'm exhausted. I want to go to bed. Can I go to bed?
No, not yet.
God damn it.
Although I'll tell you what, when we take our break, you can go ahead and take a quick power nap in the cot in the supply closet.
It's so tight and cramped.
All right. Well, we got a show that I'm really excited about this week. We're talking about the Netflix Castlevania series, which I have been just like, I've just absolutely been loving it, and I've been obsessed over it for the last few weeks now. We're finally getting to talk about it. So if my head just explodes with fanboy joy this episode, then you'll know why. So, but of course, there is a procedure to follow. So we are going to begin not with the random topic of the week this week, because I don't have a random topic of the week this week. It's been just kind of crazy in my life right now, so I haven't been able to come up with one. But we do have some Ask a Geek questions here. So we're going to go ahead and dig into those. So Ryan, he posed a question to all of us, and this was sprungboard off of Atari announcing their new console. He, along with that, we've also got, he says, Visionaries, Knights of the Magical Light is getting an IDW comic, and Rocko's Modern Life and Hey Arnold are getting 21st Century reboots. So his question is, what 20-something piece of pop culture do you anticipate or hope will see a revival in the next 4 years? So Brian, as our master of nostalgia, let's start with you.
So I was going to say, like, I would love to see this an old obscure show. I mean, pretty sure Skyblaze would know it, called Visionaries, which was it was a Hasbro toy line about knights who used like hologram technology and magic with a guy named Merlin, but it was spelled differently, so it wasn't the exact wizard. I remember seeing like an episode like on tape years ago, and I was like, child, I was like, this is amazing. Nothing came from it. I was like, oh. So like, oh, let that get revised. Hey, guess what? It's getting revised thanks to San Diego Comic-Con and IDW working with Hasbro. Like, yeah, we're gonna make a new comic now. I was like, oh wow, thanks. Like, okay. So I think everything I've ever watched or loved has been like revised at least once in my lifetime. I'm not sure how I feel about that anymore.
Okay, so then in your case, let's reverse the question. What's a property that you hope they leave alone?
They leave alone?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. That is a good question right there. Like something just kind of ended, and it's like, all right, I feel good. It stopped that way. I really don't know. I have to think about that one on like kind of percolate for a while in my head, because every aspect of a show, even like the really good ones, like for a fact, some way, shape, or form will probably come back. Here's actually to answer to go back to the first question. There's also a show I used to watch as a kid called Dino Riders, which has not been touched since way back when. So maybe we could do something like that. It was a cartoon about a human race and like evil alien race crashing on prehistoric Earth and going, all right, we have to fight each other. How are we going to fight each other? Hey, let's put lasers on dinosaurs. And as a child, I was like, this is the best thing ever.
I'm pretty sure that concepts basis of our civilization. I can think of nothing more badass than dinosaurs shooting lasers.
Yeah, so that's I think that would be a series that we should be revised sometime soon.
Coming in 2018, Dino Riders, directed by Michael Bay, rated R.
And you ruined it. Thank you. All right.
Okay. Kat, what about you? What is something that you hope gets a revival, or conversely something that you hope gets left alone?
Let's see. Good question. I can tell you, I wish they would leave anime alone when it comes to making live action films. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. If you're gonna fuck it up, just leave it alone.
Just walk away.
Right now, I'm like, hey, leave Death Note alone. Just leave it alone. Kind of right now, only because I know it's been licensed, but the animated series Miraculous Ladybug has been licensed for, I believe, a live action film, and I just keep thinking, leave it alone. Leave it alone. It's perfect in its current format. Just
what is that? Because like that you want to talk about something that's just come out of nowhere. Like I didn't hear anything about it until like a month ago, and suddenly Miraculous Ladybug is like everywhere. What is it?
It is a collaboration French-Korean cartoon. It was I don't remember who originally, I think the French or some company pitched it to a couple of different animation studios a long time ago. So there was actually like a trailer that one of the Japanese studios made for it, and it looks totally different. And then it entered hell for a little while and just disappeared off the face of the earth. And then maybe 2 years ago, I'm not sure exactly when it revived, but it ended up getting picked back up and collaborated with a Korean studio. And it's pretty much a cute little, I mean, it's like a Monster of the Day kind of cartoon, but it's so pretty. Like it's a really great Korean studio that worked on it. And then its initial language is French, and it's actually set in France. And then we also have it dubbed in America and God knows where else. But it's very appealing to certain crowds. So it's quite cute.
Yeah, I remember seeing it pop up on Netflix, and I watched an episode of it. I just picked a random episode and went from there. And the thing that really stood out to me was the voice of the villain, because the voice actor for the villain in the show is the same guy who voices that one douchebag in Skyrim who asks if you've been to the Cloud District in Whiterun. And I was like, okay, you know what? If it's the job of the artist to make me hate the villain, mission accomplished, because I want to turn this guy inside out.
Yeah, Keith Silverstein is the voice actor. He's Torbjorn in Overwatch. So he's quite popular right now. And I missed my chance to meet him because I had pneumonia and didn't get to go to Tokyo and Tulsa. So pissed off. Anyway, but I think the show is dumb as hell, but I will still watch all of it anyway because it's just so stupidly cute. And the art is really good and the ship is really strong. So, but I wish they would, I wish they weren't going to make a live action movie out of it. I wish they would just leave it alone. There was like a Christmas movie or something that was stupid. And just leave it alone. Just let the series do its own thing. Stop trying to market it like it's My Little Pony. It's not. Just let it be. Okay. Something that I wish would get a revival. Clamp's X manga. It's been dead in the water for a decade. 2 decades, maybe.
God, that makes it prehistoric by anime fan standards.
Oh my God, it's insane. The problem with X is that there was too much crazy shit going on in the world at the time. So their publisher, who was I think releasing it monthly, dropped them saying this shit got too real. Because it's a pretty apocalyptic manga, and then nobody ever picked it back up. So they couldn't get anybody to publish it, and eventually they just stopped working on it. And it's been dead in the water ever since. So, but they made an anime out of it, and they also made an anime film out of it. And they sort of both end extremely tragically. Lots of character deaths, and it kind of ends with this big fight on Tokyo Tower, and Fuma and Kamui one-on-one. It always ends in decapitation. Both the film and the TV series ended in decapitation, but with different characters getting decapitated. And so we don't know how it ends in the manga, the source material. And it's been killing me for all this time. I'm like, could you please revive this, recreate it, restart? Whatever
Finish
you gotta
it.
do. Fucking finish it, but their style has changed so much that I think I would probably not enjoy it if they started it again in their new style.
Okay. Well, for me, I'm not really say what I'd like to see get a revival, because everything that I want to see get a revival is either getting a revival or I'm scared that I'm going to jinx it so that it never actually happens. I actually want to go back to Ryan's mention of the Atari box, which it makes me laugh to read Atari's press release on it, because they're talking about, we're going to bring back all of the classic Atari titles and new intellectual properties, and I'm just like, oh wow, you're just so confident, aren't you? You're just so what are you holding? What have you got? Because I mean, let's be totally honest. We all thought that Microsoft was going to flunk when they entered the console market, but they had Halo, which so it's like, all right, either Atari is holding on to something that is going to blow us all away, or they have got nothing and they're banking completely on nostalgia. And I'm thinking it's the latter, because one of the images that they released was they're putting out a version of the console, their new console, that has, it's styled after the Atari 2600, so it's got like that wood grain paneling, that 1970s paneling, and I'm just like, wow, this is the official console of a console for men. I drink Pabst Blue Ribbon, drive a Charger, and do disco.
I do the discos.
So, hey, I hate Nixon. I don't see that I honestly do not see that console doing well. I mean, now, I don't know. It's still early in the game, so we'll see what happens there. And then let's see. We've got a question here from Rachel, and she asks if I've been following the Jed Whittaker story, which yes, I have. To give a brief summary, Jed Whittaker was a game reviewer for Destructoid, and he did a review of a Senran Kagura game, which, if you don't know what that is, basically it's one of those games that can only come from Japan. It's a fan service fighter. Picture Dynasty Warriors crossed with Ikitosen, and you've got Senran Kagura basically. And just dumb fan servicey fun. Not my cup of tea, but hey, there's people out there who like it. And Jed Whittaker was writing a review of, I can't recall off the top of my head if it was a new game or a PC port of a pre-existing game, but he basically spent the entire review calling people who like Senran Kagura games pedophiles, and acted surprised when his readers didn't like this. I believe he's been let go from Destructoid, which I have no compassion for him, because you know what? I absolutely despise fandom shaming, and that's what you did. It's bad enough when people do it just on their Twitter or their social media, but to use your professional platform that you're being paid to provide a service to your readership for, to basically insult your readers and accuse them of being sexual predators, that's not cool. So no, like I said, I believe he got fired, and if he did, he got what was coming to him, because that's just not acceptable. I absolutely detest fandom shaming, and I cannot take seriously anyone who engages in it. So yeah, that's. I'm not going to discuss the resulting Twitter meltdown from that, because that's another thing I don't believe in, is discussing Twitter gossip. But yeah. Yes, I have been following the story, to bring this back to your original question.
So long, yes.
Short answer, yes. Long answer, yeah. Anyway, on to happier questions. And then she's actually got a second question here, and this is for all of us. And this is, it's a two-part question. If you could meet any one of your heroes, who would it be? And two, who is someone that you are a fan of, but you absolutely do not want to meet? And this is why the second part of this question is why I'm bringing it up, because I think this is going to be an interesting angle. So, Brian, let's start with you. Who's a hero of yours you'd like to meet, and who's a hero of yours you'd not like to meet?
Are we limited to still alive or not still alive?
We will assume in this scenario that Skyblades can necromancy anybody who's dead alive again.
I mean, Jack Kirby is someone I said I've always wanted to meet, just to sit down and just talk business and comics and art with him before. So that's always like the given answer. I'm pretty sure I've answered this question once before, which always like I've actually met quite a couple of my heroes before. I haven't had like long discussion conversations with them like I like to, but I've met like Bruce Campbell. Oh, those two Bruces in a row. That's kind of funny. Neil Adams. I met Mick Foley and Rob Van Dam, just to name a couple. So thinking back, I've actually been super lucky meeting a lot of these people. I don't know. Like, I don't know who would be another like hero of mine I would love to meet. I haven't met Mr. T. I would love to meet Mr. T.
Okay. Do you have one that you don't want to meet?
Like a hero of mine that I don't want to meet?
Yeah.
Possibly. It's really hard to say because like I think the biggest fear I think for a lot of people when meeting idols or heroes is they don't live up to the expectation that you have given them, and you leave the whole situation disappointed. On the other side of that is like I would just fanboy out to the point I just completely and utterly embarrass myself. So go ahead.
See, it's interesting that you bring up people not living up to your expectations. The hero of mine that I don't want to meet because I'm scared to death he will live up to my expectations, and that person is Harlan Ellison, who is a brilliant writer. I absolutely love all of his books, but I've read the stories about how irascible and cranky that man is, and I'm scared to death that if I met him in person, I would say or do the wrong thing, and that he would eat my soul. Like this is coming from someone who is a self-confessed asshole. This Harlan Ellison is he makes me look tame. Like, let's just put it that way. This man is like the King Grouch. He really is.
I think the person I would like to meet but be scared about, like, I guess, ruining my expectation might be Penn Jillette. Like, I've always been fascinated with him. And I would love to sit down and, obviously just talk. But at the same time, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to. Like, because it's like you both magician and like satirist and stuff like that. I don't want to ruin the perception I have of him.
Okay. Kat, I imagine that there's not many heroes of yours that you haven't met working in the convention scene.
I think if I could just meet any one of my heroes, it would really be Sir Patrick Stewart. Because my God, he's getting up there in age, and even though he's immortal, he probably, will eventually die. And God, I would just love to meet him. He just seems like the coolest guy. Like, he seems really down to earth for somebody who's so famous. I think it would be really cool to meet him. But that's really hard to pick because there's so many people I just love to meet. But I think if there's somebody who I would be afraid of meeting, the first thing that came to mind is honestly David Lynch. Because, I've worshipped at Dune's feet for so long, that movie. And then I've recently become a huge fan of Twin Peaks. And I think, oh my God, the guy who made this must be crazy. I'm not sure I'd be able to carry a conversation with him if I ever met him in real life, Like, the shit that he comes up with is really dark and really messed up. This is a guy who made Eraserhead. I'm not sure that I can, have a normal conversation. I wouldn't know what to say. I don't think I'm as deep as him. I'd be like intimidated by all that depth.
Now watch, you're one day you're just gonna run into the most normal dude in the world, just like, yeah, what's up? How do you like that local sports team?
Hey, how about that? I'm super jealous right now, though, because one of my friends works at Disneyland, and David Tennant was just there, and he served David Tennant ice cream. And we're all just like, what was it like? And he's like, I served him ice cream, okay? It was like serving a person ice cream.
It went like this. Here's your ice cream, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
He probably got like 7 of them, but still, it was like, we're just like, oh my God.
Well, I mean, look at the man. If he doesn't eat, he's going to waste away.
Yeah, I think it was probably there with a group, possibly his family, but still, that would have been so cool.
All righty. Okay, so that's all the Ask Geek questions that we have for this week. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdofthethirdpower.com, or you can drop them in the comments beneath the YouTube feed. We do occasionally troll through the YouTube for questions, gather them up there. So yeah, send your questions in. We love getting them, and we love reading them out on the air and answering your questions.
All right, so now that the questions are out of the way, let's get to the actual topic of the show. And today's topic, of course, is Castlevania, the Netflix series that came out just recently.
Calm down.
I'm sorry, I'm just really excited.
Right. Sit down over in the corner.
Terrifyingly.
Good Lord, man. As you can tell, so this was a bit of a surprise. This got announced sort of just out of the blue, out of nowhere. Netflix said, "Hey, we have Castlevania," and we all went, "Huh?" And was then debuted around in, I think, July 7th or so. I will say people did enjoy it. I have things I have a small rant about certain things about that, but I don't want to take up the floor just yet with that.
Am I gonna have to fight you?
No, because you already heard this before, but the audience has not. You know what you know where I'm going.
Yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
And then I can. Well, you can fight me, but you're gonna lose. So let's
you
get
are a
started
titan
here.
of a man, and I am just this scrawny little toothpick that you could snap in half.
Right. So we'll get started here. So Gonzo, I'm going to assume, and I think it's a very good assumption, that you know a lot about Castlevania.
I do. I'm a very huge Castlevania fan. And going back to something you said earlier, part of about this being a total surprise, part of the reason why it was such a huge surprise was that, see, Castlevania is a Konami property, and we all know how Konami has been behaving over the last couple of years. But the thing is that, you know, aside from the Lords of Shadow duology, which I think the second one of those came out like 3 years ago, Konami hasn't been doing anything with the Castlevania franchise except making pachinko machines. So it was just kind of written off as being, you know, in the same boat as Silent Hill and Metal Gear, as being game franchises that Konami just didn't care about anymore and wasn't going to do anything with. So the fact that this got licensed for a full animated series was very much a surprise, because like now the speculation since it's come out is, well, okay, is Konami testing the waters to see if people are still interested in this franchise? Are they maybe going to be developing more games? You know what? So there's a lot of questions up in the air about what this means for the larger future of the Castlevania series.
I just think it's bad that you're bad talking plinko machines, because I find them very fun, but I also have a gambling problem.
Well, I know a good support group that I can refer you to afterwards, and you can join me there, because you know I'm also a frequent. I've also frequently lost my pants at the casino, and not in a fun way.
I know, because support group.
Well, hello there. Okay, but yeah, I'm a huge Castlevania fan. So yeah, and I've actually since the series come out, I've actually been playing through the games that this series takes its cues from, to kind of see how close they've actually been to the games. And spoiler alert, pretty fucking faithful.
All right, so let's do a little kind of general consensus here. So so what do we think about this? Like, from the episodes that came out, was this something sort of enjoyable? Let's ignore the fact it's a video game adaptation, because if we do video game adaptation, that always has a big stigma to it, because they're all terrible. So was this, to you guys, I'll do Gonzo first and Kat. What is your general thoughts? Did you enjoy this?
I absolutely loved it. I loved that they were able to keep faithful to the events of the game, and while still telling a great story, because you know, this is something that we've discussed on the numerous video game movie adaptations that we've done shows on. One of the big problems that so many of these adaptations have is keeping faithful to the source material and balancing that between keeping faithful to the source material and being able to tell a good standalone story. And I feel like, based on what we've seen so far, that this series has managed to do that and do it perfectly. Because the things that it takes from the games, it basically justifies the tropes. It gives them a realistic presence without, doing the battleship and going, okay, how are we going to justify the fact that these people are shouting B9 and A12 at each other?
Fascinating. So, Kat, coming from a more, I guess, anime background, how did you feel?
I kind of almost take issue with this calling itself a season because it did
We will
not.
get to that soon.
It felt like I was watching an OVA. I felt pretty good not knowing really anything about Castlevania. Going into it, it explained a lot of stuff. It kind of is a standalone story, but again, it was only 4 episodes, so I was kind of disappointed that it was so short.
Well, I guess I'll let Brian speak his piece before I go in. But there's actually a bit of an explanation as to why the season was so short. But Brian,
shouldn't matter. You should be able to stand. It should be able to stand on its own. And it didn't really give me the feeling that it could do that. Like it didn't feel like a whole series. It felt like an OVA to me. But in any case, otherwise it was okay. It was very violent, which I get it, but
yeah, I've heard comparisons to Berserk.
It's not my kind of thing,
Yeah.
So you did mention that it's 4 episodes long. So I will get this out of the way because I've already talked about it a little bit. So before I do, I will say, yes, I thought the series, quote unquote, was good, but I was immensely pissed off about it being 4 episodes and sort of the way it was presented as such. So when it got like surprised announced on us, I thought, okay, this might be interesting. This might be cool. I've kind of played Castlevania, but I'm not very good, so I didn't play a lot of them. And then, but something then felt a little bit fishy to me. Like, okay, it got announced, and it's debuting very quickly. That's odd. And then the day before it debuts, it finally gave us the voice cast. I said, well, that's even odder. Then it was 4 episodes, and I said, this is bullshit. Like, I felt like it was very rushed through for the announcement because we didn't get a full series. It's not a season. This is a prologue. They gave us a prologue, but they presented it as an actual series. And I thought more people would be mad like I was because it feels like you're getting ripped off. It's, hey, we're doing this big thing with Castlevania. JK, here's the first 4 episodes. We're done for a while. Hope to see you again in season 2. Maybe it will be 8. Like, I didn't like that. That felt very like just rug pulled from under me, sort of false presentation and everything like that. And I was a little bit upset more people were not as mad. Maybe they weren't as mad because they enjoyed it and do want more. I get that. But to me, I was like, this is wrong. This is like watching Star Wars and like A New Hope, and the movie ends when they meet Han Solo. Like, yeah, things are established, but nothing's ever finished.
Well,
my thought on that would be that it was probably an easier pill to swallow if you were more familiar with Castlevania and maybe less familiar with anime, maybe. But yeah, I think it is a misrepresentation to call it a series.
Well,
short it was.
Well, part of it has to do with the pre-Netflix history of this series, because this was actually originally supposed to be a trilogy of direct-to-DVD short movies, of which the first one was like, I think 70% completed before Konami pulled the plug on it. Damn you, Konami! And then Netflix just kind of picked up out of nowhere, and then Warren Ellis and the production crew pretty much picked up where they left off. So as I understand it, at the stage they were in the production, all they really had to do to get to the product that we had now was basically make a few edits at the front and back of each episode to cut the movie into the 4-episode series. Now, that's not a decision that I would have made. What I would have done was I would have just released it as one contiguous film and then market it as Castlevania the Prologue, or the pilot, or how would you? But that's sort of why we got that. That sort of explains why we got as short a first quote unquote season as we did, because this is literally just the first. The first was meant to be a movie, but it got chopped up into 4 episodes.
Do you think that they were working on it doing better as a series than as a film?
Well, I honestly, I think that's a kind of a moot question, because within hours of the first of this season being released, Netflix announced that they were doing a second season. So clearly, Netflix has enough faith in it to give it a shot to do as a full season. And Konami's going along with it.
But do you think that it would have been just as successful as a film, or was it more successful because Netflix is our binge watching, go-to? So we consider, we're going to watch, a whole season of something. We're going to go to Netflix to binge watch.
I do think that's why they made the division, was when it got picked up by Netflix. Because for whatever reason, Netflix doesn't seem to I've noticed Netflix doesn't seem to like to do original movies. They like to do original shows. So I think that, either Netflix or the production crew believed that this would be more in keeping with more successful with taking Netflix's business model of doing it as a series. And like I said, so far it seems to be working. Now, I have to agree with Brian on one point that he didn't really bring up in this episode, but that he brought up in his first rant to me about it, which is, I am worried that this is going to set a precedent that Netflix is like, all right, here's our next season, and it's only like 3 episodes. So I hope that this is just a fluke and not a sign of things to come.
There, a lot of that's, I don't necessarily sort of believe. It sounds like to me, they were so quick to renew for 8 episodes or even for a second season, it sounds like they were done. It sounds like, why couldn't they have just waited to, continue the editing process and release it all at once? Why release this now, other than to, I guess, show what they want to do?
Well, like I said, I mean, what we have, that was pretty much the first movie just cut into 4 parts. So, and remember that at that point, the first movie was only 70% through production before Konami pulled the plug on it the first time. So it might be, I think this is a case of where the production crew was just as surprised as we were. Like, oh, here's this thing that we haven't touched since 2007, and it's been picked up for a series. Okay, all right. Back to the drawing board.
There's a little something to that. So we've sort of given a little bit of a general thoughts about all this and how we sort of feel, and a little bit of the marketing itself, but that doesn't go into sort of the story that was presented to us. So let's talk about this story and how it went through. We do get to see Dracula and his.
Let me break out my flow chart here, because this is where I go into professor mode.
Well, let's just keep the cliff notes. Let's try to keep the cliff notes here. We don't need to go into the lore that of the games that may or may not be present in this show.
Okay.
So what's the cliff notes version of this? We got to see Dracula, why he wants to kill everybody, and then the Belmonts and everything like that.
Okay. Well, to give a brief plot rundown of the plot, the Castlevania is the multi-generational story of the Belmont family and its never-ending war, once-a-century war with Dracula. This series takes its cues from Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, which is one of the earlier games in the timeline, and it also takes some cues from Symphony of the Night for reasons that I'll explain later. But it basically, like I said, this basically serves as a prologue to the story. The story opens with Lisa from the village of Lupu, who wins the award for bravest person on the face of this planet, because armed with nothing more than a little pocket knife, she goes up to Castlevania and bangs on Dracula's door and pretty much says, hey, I want to be a doctor and I'm not going to take any of your shit. And this impresses Dracula enough that he not only decides to teach her actual science, because this is set in Wallachia in like the 1400s, back when, being a doctor meant, as Dracula put it, daubing chicken blood on peasants. And if you had any actual chemical knowledge, then you were burned at the stake. As unfortunately happens to Lisa 20 years later. And Dracula, who has since married Lisa, comes back from a journey that he's taken to find his wife's home burned to the ground and his wife burned at the stake. And then he proves why when you call him he immediately proves why when you call him the Lord of Darkness, you write that shit in capitals, son. because he just goes completely fucking epic ape shit. I think this is probably one of the most badass showings of vampire powers that I've ever seen. He basically communicates to the town in a giant pillar of flame, like, what have you done? I'm giving you 1 year to get the hell out of here, and then it's literally going to rain fire and blood. The people don't listen. Dracula winds up burning the city of Targovista and then setting his armies from hell upon the land of Wallachia. And in the intervening time period, we're also introduced to Trevor Belmont, who is the last surviving son of the Belmont family. And we learn that is because the Belmonts, who have been fighting vampires and creatures of darkness for many years, have been excommunicated from the church. The ancestral home has been burned down, and most of the Belmont family has been killed. Trevor outright says he's the last surviving member of the family, and he's just trying. He's pretty pissed off about this whole thing. He's just trying to lay low, get drunk, keep his belly full, and find a tall tree to sleep under. So he's really just kind of done this whole, all right, screw it. If that's the way you're going to treat me, I'm not going to do anything to help you attitude. And this 4-episode series shows him kind of coming to understand how Dracula's armies are affecting everyday life for the common people, and kind of coming to terms with the fact that, yeah, you may be the last son of the Belmont family, and the church may have destroyed your family and, destroyed everything that you knew and loved, but you know what? You are still who you are, and you've got to come to grips with that. And it also, the series sets us up with, introduces us to Saifa Belnades and Alucard, who we'll get into why he's such an important character later. And anyway, I'm kind of rambling on. So what did you guys think of the plotting and the story of this series?
I thought that the pace of it was pretty good. Sort of like introduce a character every episode kind of thing. A simple revenge story. I didn't understand. I understood why Dracula needed the year to gather his armies, but I don't know why he would tell them. If he was that pissed off at them, why would he say, "Hey, get out of town in the next year"? Why wouldn't he just show up in a year on them completely unsuspecting?
I'm sorry, you're about to say something, Brian?
Yeah, I think so the idea was that this series sort of tried to give Dracula a bit more, not only a reason to attack, but they almost try to make him a tad bit sympathetic, where he actually hadn't done anything for a while. Then he married his wife. This wife, she's kind of teaching him a little bit about humanity, and then humanity fucks him over. And so that's where it sort of comes from. And the year was I think was his last remnants of his wife going, at least give him a chance to leave before you murder everyone. That's where it's sort of coming from. And then no one listened, and they all died. Because unfortunately, this country, now I don't know if it's the writing or anything, or full of idiots.
Yeah, well, yeah.
The devil says run. Why would you not?
The burning of Lisa and the that sending Dracula into a spiral, that is straight out of the games. That's one of the cues it took from Symphony of the Night, and along with the introduction of Dracula and Lisa's son Alucard, who first appeared in the game from which this story takes its cues. And I was really surprised by how well they managed to pardon the term, humanize Dracula. Because throughout that whole first episode, when we see him interact with Lisa, the one thing that was made clear about Lisa in the short time that she was on screen was this is a woman who is driven to do good. She is fiercely intelligent, fiercely independent, and she wants to direct that to making the world better. She is by every definition of the word a good person. And the church, which is supposed to be about upholding the values of goodness and helping people, fucking burns her as a witch. So it's, I like this sort of dichotomy, I guess, of on the one side you have Dracula, who thinks that humanity is, a bunch of utter bastards, but gives it a shot and thinks, okay, well, maybe there's a chance that they're good. And then, this coming from a guy who's supposed to be the embodiment of all darkness. And then you have the church who is on paper supposed to be the representation of everything good and wholesome in the world being utter bastards. So there was this, it was interesting to see, I guess, sort of the role reversal between the two, if that makes any real sense.
And speaking of bastards, let's go to Trevor Belmont here, because he's kind of a bastard. It's one of those weird things where, like, you see a show where the hero, quote unquote hero, is introduced, and he's not really very heroic. He's drunk in a bar, and he beats up the guys in the bar after they find out he's part of the Belmont family. Doesn't really seem like he cares about anyone and just going from place to place. But there is a bit of, I guess, of a character arc to a point of, I have to do this because it is my bloodline and I'm supposed to do this and try to save people out of it. He's sort of forced back into something he doesn't want to do anymore.
Well, I mean, can you really blame him? Because if you go back and you look at that is played in episode 1, which I love that music and I want to get an extended version of it. If you look, you actually see he actually was forced to watch as his home was burned down. He probably watched his family get killed right in front of him. So, I mean, yeah, he's an asshole, but on the other hand, he's kind of like, after what's happened yet, I kind of have to give this to you.
Possibly. I will also like to point out this series, I believe, was written by Warren Ellison, who is a creator. I do enjoy a lot of his work, but for fuck's sake, Warren, when you say make exposition, can you at least make it kind of enjoyable? I don't really care about goat fuckers and brother cousins.
All right. Okay. Kat, what about you? What were your thoughts?
Well, for the most part, Trevor was the only character I enjoyed. I just completely enjoyed Trevor, whereas everybody else was just sort of there for me. And that might just be because obviously he's written pretty comically.
He is a snarky bastard.
He is a snarky bastard, and it's Richard Armitage playing him, so obviously I'm gonna be like, okay, Thor and Oakenshield talking, you have to like but yeah, for me he was the only character that I just enjoyed 100%. I was interested in him. I was interested in his story. None of the other characters really stood out like that. I mean, except for maybe Dracula. But Dracula's story was told so quickly. It was very straightforward. You didn't have to pay a lot of attention to it. Whereas Belmont has a little more depth. Yeah, that was my thoughts on Belmont.
Yeah, because you do follow Trevor more than you follow anyone else. And so we sort of talked about a little bit of the characters involved, and it's don't want to cut off the conversation, but like you mentioned before, it's 4 episodes, and we sort of got what we needed out of it. The main villain, the Bishop, I believe, was one of the more evil characters I've seen a lot. And I'm going to mention Sky. I think we talked about that with Skyblaze. I was very satisfied that he was dead. Because it was funny. He had the conversation with demons like, you can't come into the house of God. He's like, no, God fucked you over. He doesn't like you.
I'm not a very holy man. I don't know if you realize.
I loved that conversation. I thought that was brilliantly written. And by the way, that monster is actually a boss monster from the games. I believe that's Pazuzu. But I absolutely loved that conversation. Because in that whole conversation, you see the Bishop just his whole belief system just break down around him, and you just see him have this breakdown. He's like, I'm this high and mighty holy man. I imagine that I in my head canon, that Bishop is an ancestor of Judge Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Character. Just of my virtue, I am justly proud, and I am sinless. And along comes this demon. It's like, dude, you have no fucking idea what your God really thinks of you. You are just you're not even worth the dirt in his ass. The "Let me kiss you" line was a bit much, but I love just the verbal smackdown that the Pazuzu demon gave him before presumably eating his face.
The Bishop I thought was a decent character, but I didn't feel like he was particularly original. I've seen that kind of character 100 times, you know. But I also had this really big problem with his voice actor, in that his voice actor is exceptionally talented. He's very very prolific voice actor, but at no point in time did his face match his voice in terms of emotion. Like there was, I don't know what they were doing, if they animated it first or if they did the lines first, but he was that kind of like quiet spoken character for a lot of it. And he wasn't very emotive at times, but his face was very emotive. Or his mouth would be opened very wide when he was like speaking very softly or something. For me, I felt this really big disconnect, and it's probably just because I watch a lot of anime, so I'm always watching the lip flaps to see. So that sort of bothered me. And it sort of turned me off from the character even more than I was already turned off from the character, which bothers me because this particular actor is so good. He was in like Gargoyles, and he was in Sherlock, and he's just in everything. His name is Matt Frewer. Delightful American Canadian guy. I think most recently saw him on Supernatural, but he's in a ton of stuff and always very enjoyable. But good God, I couldn't like get into the believability that this was a character, because I just voice and face disconnect for me.
And that could be going back to what Gonzo had mentioned before, that this is like a very old project. So this could have been a situation where like he did read the lines, or they did animate it and then change the animation, but didn't change the voice. So there's could be a couple of different reasons. I kind of noticed that a little bit with some of the other characters as well. Just someone not really matching what was going on in the screen. Now we've gone through some of those characters. Now let's go to the final character, and Gonzo can probably take over from here, because the final character who shows up in the last episode for about 10 minutes and then the series ends is Alucard.
Well, before we do Alucard, we have to talk about Sypha, because she was also a major character in Dracula's Curse. They were actually...
Yeah, but I don't want to talk about Cypher, so we're going to talk about Alucard.
Yeah, she wasn't really a whole lot in it.
Well,
technically she was in it more than Dracula, or more than Alucard, though.
Yeah.
Fine, on a technicality. All right, go ahead, Gonzo.
So we do have to talk a bit about Sypha and put this in context. Dracula's Curse was the first game to have multiple playable characters, and Alucard and Sypha were both allies that Trevor picks up in the game. There's one that we don't see, who I'm hoping will show up in the second season, and that's Grant Dynasty. But the reason why these characters are so important is because of the impact that they have further on down the line. It's hinted at that sorry, let me recollect my thoughts here. After the conclusion of Dracula's Curse, Sypha and Trevor get married. And it's because of that the Belmonts descending from them have an affinity for magic. Trevor is actually the last member of the line who is just a straight up, average, just super trained mortal. It's because of the Belnati's bloodline mixing with the Belmonts that the Belmonts have the affinity for magic that they have later on down the line. And then the reason why Alucard is so important is because he's one of the few characters who actually reappears later in the timeline. And I was really disappointed that we didn't get to see more of it. His conflict with Dracula provides a very interesting sort of dimension to the battle between the forces of good and evil in terms of his relationship with his father. Because here we have two characters who they both lost someone they love, Dracula, his wife, Alucard, his mother, but they both react to it in very different ways. Dracula winds up going on this, going into a tailspin of, I'm going to just kill humanity, Whereas Alucard is very much his mother's son, very much believes that humanity can be good and that innocence should be spared. And that throws father and son into conflict, but it's still very clear over the course of this conflict that they still love each other, and it's really a very violent discussion of philosophy between the two over how to take Lisa's legacy going forward. And I was really disappointed that we didn't get to see more of that. Maybe if they do an adaptation of Symphony of the Night later down the line, they'll explore that, because that was really where that pathos was really explored, was in that game. So
you are mentioning a lot of things that actually didn't happen in the series.
Yeah.
To the point where I feel like, and I don't want to be accusatorial, is that you're filling gaps in because you did enjoy it, which is fine, but it wasn't there. Like, you're hoping it shows up, but it's not there yet, which is where I've done that before.
Well, and the thing is, it's very easy. Part of the reason why it's so easy for me to do that is because they put these little hints of it in the series, and I can see where they're going for it, and I can't help but go that extra mile. It's the geek paradox. It's not there, but I see it there. So, but as far as his presence in this series, based on what we've seen, like I said, we didn't really get to see a whole lot of Alucard, and I'm really kind of disappointed with that. Again, because of everything I just said before, I see where the character can go, and I want to see it go there. And that's one of the reasons why I'm with you, Brian. I'm kind of frustrated about the length of this episode of this series, because there's so much more that they can and should be doing, but they're not doing it yet, and I have to wait a year.
Key term, yet, if at all. You never know what's going to come up.
Yeah.
So and just I'm just trying to lay you down. Just kind of, I got to know you watched it 17,000 times. I realize
I will say that I do like the back and forth that Alucard and Trevor have before their knockdown drag out fight, because you kind of see. It initially comes off as these two people just, insulting each other back and forth. But then you realize, after you go back and watch it, after you know how that fight plays out and how the series ends, you realize that Alucard is actually sizing Trevor up and trying to gauge his worthiness as an ally. He just keeps asking all these leading questions, like, okay, why are you here? What are you doing? You want to destroy Dracula? Do you think you can? What have you got going? It's almost, I would describe it as the most violent job interview ever to be depicted on film, if that makes any sense. But I've rambled on long enough about that. What did you guys think of it?
I don't know, Kat. What did you think of Alucard?
Yeah, I thought he was cool, I guess. I guess. I mean, he wasn't on screen for very long, and the fight was really great, which we could have a whole discussion on, just the animation of that fight. But I didn't have any particularly strong feelings about Alucard. I kind of knew a little bit that, here's Dracula's son. He's gonna be one of the good guys, I guess. But again, because it's so short, I know that fight was necessary. It's sort of like, in Avengers, having Thor and Iron Man and Captain America all fight, one, because you need to see it, and two, it's a bonding experience. I understand that the fight was needed, but the series is so short. It's like, did we really need to have it go on that long? And again, it would have been so much easier if Alucard had just been like, oh, hey, I'm Dracula's son, and I hate my dad right now, so you want to help me fight him? Instead of deliberately creating miscommunication to test Belmont. I hate when characters do that.
Very true. So you mentioned the animation, and this is an animated series, as it were. So you said that you could talk about the fight, and the fight really stood out to you. So what was the animation like? What is the animation? That's a great question. What stood out for the animation for you besides that fight? Is this something that you can show other people, saying this is something extremely quality work, or is this something very fast paced and chopped up work?
I'll tell you, I would show it to somebody if they said, hey, I really want to watch Guts. literal like insides. If you want to see somebody's insides animated, then you could watch this and you'd be very satisfied with the amount of guts.
Yeah, this is a capital R rated series. I'll tell you something that really stood out to me was the attention to detail. Every time I watched the series, I noticed some new little touch that I hadn't noticed before. Like, to give you a good example, one of the things that you notice very quickly about Dracula is how fucking long his fingernails are. Like, the man's got some serious, like, his manicurist bill must be just through the roof, because the man has got nails for days. But when he's having his temper tantrum about Lisa being killed, and he's having his screaming match with Alucard, you see him clench his fist, and you actually see his palm starts bleeding. And I was like, wow, that's a really nice touch, because you don't often, a lot of times when you see characters with those long ass fingernails, they have what I call retractable nail syndrome, where they can clench their fists and not wind up tearing up their hands. And it was really neat to see just that little touch and that little attention to detail. Another thing that I thought was really neat was in that same scene after he gives the 1-year ultimatum, and you have kind of a free shot of his reflection on the glass. That is like a line for line lift of his character portrait from Symphony of the Night. And I was like, oh, cool, I recognize that.
So a lot of good like hidden Easter eggs that kind of keep your attention going.
Yeah, there were so many little things that if you didn't know about it, you would just take it at face value. But if you've played the games, you realize that those are little tips of the hat to the players and the fans. Like both of the, like, for example, going back to Sypha and Alucard, both of those stories of how Trevor met them are straight from the games. You actually fight a Stone Eye Cyclops with a statue Sypha in the background before she joins you, and Alucard is actually a boss fight in the game before you pick him up as an ally. So there are all these neat little nods, like, and you see like the sub weapons, like the throwing knives, the axe, the salt, the holy water. We didn't see the throwing cross, which I was kind of disappointed with, especially considering you had that opportunity with that cross sword thing that the one priest was carrying around. But that's done like this. Like, I just noticed all these neat little touches that were nods to the original game series.
It's very interesting. But could that also be possibly a crutch though? Like, yes, there's all this sort of nostalgic aspect of it, and they did try to very hard to sort of match certain things from the games and so forth. But did it help the story, or did it just distract you from maybe some of the issues that the series may have?
I'm going to yield that question to Kat, because there's no way that I can answer that. I'm a biased fanboy in this case.
So the animation was clearly a nod to a lot of other kind of similar things. Mostly, I'm thinking of Vampire Hunter D. Like, the style was very Vampire Hunter D, and the violence, lots of blood, very Vampire Hunter D. But was the animation to distract you from the lack of story? A little bit. It looks so good most of the time. There's a couple of points where the animation dips, but you kind of know that they saved up all of their best skill for the big final fight scene.
Which I absolutely loved. Oh my god.
Yeah, I actually liked the scene where Belmont's leading the town people in a fight just as much as I liked that final fight scene.
Yeah, the real highlight is that scene where he's rallying the town's defenses, because you see in that not just that Trevor's a natural leader and a fighter, but you also kind of get an idea of maybe why the church excommunicated and destroyed his family, because maybe I kind of got this theory that, okay, maybe the Belmonts got to be so popular and so respected that the church kind of was afraid that they would take the power from them.
Right. Yeah, it was a good fight. It was a good fight. Good solid fight to watch. It does kind of seem to me like they spent more time on the animation than completing a story, because obviously it's an open-ended story. It's quote unquote season 1. And there's a lot of shock value in it. There's a lot of unnecessary violence and gore that I think shock you more than they make you think, oh, this is quality. You know? But I mean, it's still beautiful. It's just also disgusting.
Yeah, I think one of the a few times I kind of turned away. I did when they went to the town after the nightfall, and like intestines were like all over the place. I'm like, this is gross.
You know what's weird is I think if this were a live action film, some of that stuff would look kind of dumb. You know, like we would look at it and be like, that's fake. But when we're watching it animated like this, they can put in all this detail and make it look more gruesome than it would be in real life. And I think it's actually just more gruesome being animated than it would have been if they had done it live action.
Yeah, that's probably true. So I think we've sort of covered the series because it's only 4 episodes long. I'm not going to get over that, Gonzo.
You know what? In many aspects, I agree with you. Like you said, we've already covered that ground.
Yeah. So let's put together some final thoughts here. I'll start with Kat, and I'll work your way to Gonzo. Gonzo, you can have like the. So Kat, overall, the Castlevania series. How would you? I'm not going to use our movie rating. So how would you sort of judge it? What is your final thoughts about the whole scenario?
My final thoughts would be that it's a good, solid show. It's not going to be for everybody just due to the level of violence that's in it. Obviously, this isn't one of those shows that you could, like people default, oh, animated series, cartoons, show it to your kids. Do not show this to your kids. That's a really terrible idea. But there's a certain group of people who would enjoy it. I think if you enjoyed something like Vampire Hunter D or Blood the Last Vampire, like one of those, early 2000 era animated films that are pretty gory, you would probably enjoy this because it's basically the same thing, but with Rich Armitage. If you enjoy Rich Armitage, you will enjoy him as Belmont because he's stupendous. Literally the best thing about this series is Belmont. If you want to watch Castlevania for the story, you are probably better off waiting until there's another season. It kind of sounds like this was meant to be a 3-part thing, so I'm gonna probably guess and say there's 2 more seasons coming, possibly.
That I don't know. All the research that I did just told me the season came about. I mean, literally all we know about the second season is Netflix wants it.
Yeah.
So quick to renew it, that's for sure.
Yeah. So if you're interested more in it for the story and seeing how the game connects to the animated series, I would honestly just wait until the rest of it comes out and get the full story rather than half a story, and then you can be disappointed like me and Brian.
Yeah, so I'll put it much. It's good. Like I don't want to. I know I'm highly critical of it, but it is good. But it is also flawed. Some of the scenes and script writing was a bit iffy at points. I felt like some of the dialogue was very iffy at some points. But the overall action, story, and the characters sort of make up for that. But I can only recommend this for people who are super into Castlevania. Speaking of which, Gonzo, yes, Gonzo, how do you feel now?
I have to be fair here. I know that I've sung this show's praises, and I think that's because as a fan of Castlevania and because I know where this story goes, I see an enormous amount of potential for the future, and I think that's what's gotten me so excited. Is Netflix has basically become a drug dealer now. It's like, okay, here's your first taste. Oh my God, give me more! I need it. But like I said, I see an enormous amount of potential in this series, not just based on what we've seen in these 4 episodes, but also just based on the track record of the Netflix shows that we've reviewed. Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Voltron. We know that Netflix is not going to just put out a half-baked product, that they're going to do something great with this if they do anything with it at all.
There's some debate to that, but we'll leave that alone.
Well, I know Iron Fist, but hey, nobody's perfect.
No, it's just funny because you said, "Oh, they're not going to do anything half-baked," and they literally gave us half a show.
They literally gave us half a show.
So, but I absolutely loved this, and I can't wait to see more. And I'm really hoping that they really run with the multi-generational aspect of the series, and we maybe after they conclude Trevor's story, maybe we'll see Simon, or I'd really like to see them adapt the Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night duology, because that is the arc that really expands on Alucard's character and shows that that dichotomy between him and Dracula that I mentioned earlier. So I said, I absolutely love this, and I really want to see more. And I think part of the reason why I'm so rabid about this series is because, like I said, I see the potential and I see what they can do, and I'm really hoping that they live up to that potential. So,
well,
yeah,
we're gonna have to wait and see when the second season does debut sometime in 2018. But now it's to the fans. What did you guys think? Leave in the comments below. Did you like the series? Did you not like the series? Was it gross? Was it awesome? Did you watch it 12 billion times like Gonzo? Tell us down there. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. But that's all the time we have here this week of Nearer to the Third Power. We're going to take a small break for next week to recover and sort of get back to our full 100% health. And then we'll be back some more shows a little bit later. So hope you guys enjoyed this time. I'm going to play us all out here. So I'm Brian.
I'm the cat.
I'm Dr. Gonzo, and I'm a little irritated that you stole my line.
Ha ha! Taka, play us out.
Damn it!